As someone who works with expert authors to write and publish books that build careers, I speak with a lot of folks who aren't quite sure if they're ready to start their book. And I totally get this. It is so difficult to know whether your confidence is warranted, and even more so, whether your imposter syndrome is warranted. And that's why today I want to give you 3 concrete questions you can ask yourself to decide, are you ready to start your expert book? Stay tuned.
You've got the story, you've got the idea, you just don't know the steps in the process. If this is what's holding your memoir back, I have got the solution for you. The Memoir Method Checklist is going to take you through every single step you need from idea to published marketable book. And you can download it now at pageandpodium.com/checklist.
As I mentioned in the opening of this video, I find that one of the most difficult questions that authors have to ask themselves is whether they're actually ready to start their book. Now, one thing that I find, especially among the high achievers that I tend to work with, is that there often is a real disconnect between how much we know, how much we have to share with our audience and the world, and how much we really trust that that knowledge is actually valuable to other people. And y'all, I feel this in my own life so hard. It can be so difficult to give ourselves a real, accurate assessment of whether we're actually ready to get started with something like a book, something that's not only going to take a pretty large amount of time, effort, and energy, but also something that will be around for probably forever. We need to really be sure that we're ready. And at the same time, I know y'all don't want to wait so long that you miss that window of opportunity when your book could really do the most for you and your audience. So I wanted to break down today 3 questions that I really try to get at when I'm chatting with aspiring expert authors. Now, let me start by clarifying what I mean when I use this expert author term, because this is a new term that I'm really workshopping and I really like it. I want to toss it out to y'all to see what you think. Now, one of the things that I have really grappled with as I have built this podcast, as I have built my company, actually, is really helping people see themselves as someone who could write and publish a book, someone who should write and publish a book. And one of the things that I have found that I hear so often is that the term writer, even the term aspiring writer, can sometimes feel a little bit intimidating. If we don't feel like we have really enough kind of credibility, we haven't taken enough time working in this field of books to call ourselves a writer, we often feel in this kind of liminal space. And that matters more than you might think for this issue of being ready to write your book. The reason we really need to think about what kinds of terminology we're using to describe ourselves is that when we think of our identity, it is very closely tied up with our readiness. As long as we don't feel like our identity is one of expertise or authority or credibility, we will very often shy away from writing a book. We'll just basically assume that we're not ready because we don't yet feel 100% confident that we are often the best at this thing. And that can mean we wait while other folks pass us by, and we miss out on all of the benefits of writing a book. Now, one of the things that's really a catch-22 here is that one of the benefits of writing a book is gaining that authority and credibility. So I think you can see where I'm going here. We often will end up in this kind of vicious cycle, this idea where we don't think that we're good enough to start the book yet, but actually the book might be the thing that would get us to feel as though we are good enough. And I want to break down the kind of 2 components, the 2 ways that every single day I see books giving people this level of confidence, this feeling that they really are ready. And the first is in external authority and credibility. And I suspect that this is something that if you are kind of itching to write a book, you want that. I totally get it, and it is worth it. When we write a book, oftentimes that signals to others that we are either the authority or at least an authority. After all, we have this phrase, she wrote the book on the topic. We all want that. And particularly if you are in this leadership space, this speaking space, this space where you want that expertise, where that expertise is really leading the way in the work that you're doing. Well, of course, when the book comes out, you will experience that boost in credibility and authority because you've got that book. And I'll tell you, I see this across the board. And in fact, one of the things that I think is so striking to think about is that I have actually often seen folks, often those who are kind of transitioning from one career area to another, who were even able to use a book on a different topic to establish credibility and authority on their new topic. Now, I know that seems a little bit far-fetched, but truly, just having written and published a book will often make you authority, credibility, will give you all of this external approval by just having finished this process. And I think that's well-deserved, but it is something that is going to come after the book. So it doesn't do you very much good if you're waiting for that level of authority to start the book. Now, the second way that actually doing this work is going to give you that sense of authority is simply through your internal clarity. Now, I work with folks in all kinds of areas, and I think a lot of you know I was a university professor for many, many years. So I am someone who has worked with a lot of folks to really clarify and hone their ideas. We do this in all kinds of ways, and particularly when I was at the university, I worked in a communication and film department. So people were really sharing these ideas, building these ideas in all kinds of ways. Let me tell you, I have never seen a process that has as certain of clarity, as certain of helping people really hone and dial in their ideas as writing a book. There is simply no way that you will go through the entire process from development to drafting to editing to getting feedback without coming away feeling like your ideas are concrete, without understanding how valuable they are, how much more valuable they can be when you're circulating them and honing them. And truly, as you come away with this book in your hands, there is such a sense of resignation, such a sense of understanding your purpose. And in that way, perhaps even more than the external validation of holding the book in your hands, getting the clarity of the process is going to serve you so well as you are moving forward into the type of authority that you're looking for. Now, unfortunately, again, this is something that is happening through the process, which means we've got to decide that we're ready before we have access to that. And I know, y'all, this makes things so complicated. It is really, really difficult to know whether you're ready to begin or not. So, how does this term expert author serve us? Well, what I want to encourage you all to do is really latch on to the fact that once you start writing, you are an expert author. There is simply no magic to becoming an expert author other than just stepping into your authority. And as I just shared, the process of writing the book, as well as, of course, the outcome of writing the book, that really is what authority is. So in many, many ways, the first step to actually being ready is to claim the identity of readiness. So I want you to start thinking of yourself as an expert author. And I know it feels really uncomfortable. Please don't turn the video off. It's going to take a little bit of practice. You're going to have to get your brain used to this reclamation of what has actually always been true, which is you are the authority on the things that you practice every day. Okay, so with that said, I know that it can be quite confusing to know whether you're ready or not. And that's why, again, I want to give you 3 really concrete questions that you can ask yourself. You can even do a little homework here, journal, talk through with a friend to really know when you are ready to start the process. So with that, let's get right into it. The first question I want you to ask yourself is your book both unique and recognizable? Now, I am borrowing this question from a pretty standard part of a traditional industry book proposal, and the section where we are typically clarifying this idea that we have both a recognizable and a unique book is in the comps section. Now, the comps section of your proposal is typically going to have 3 to 5 books that have been published within the past, usually 3 to 5 years. Now, oftentimes folks are surprised when I tell them what types of books should go in here, because I do find that a lot of folks really resist really recognizing that there are any books that are similar to theirs at all. But this is a mistake. The thing about the book industry, the thing about the book market, is that most of us actually look for books that are similar to books we have liked in the past. And what that means is, if we try to say that our book is totally different than anything out there, that often means that we have uniqued ourselves out of a market. We don't want that. Instead, what we want to be able to show is both that there are books that are similar, that are in the same kind of general topic area, that the genre is recognizable to our reader, but also that we are contributing at least one new thing. And one is not too few. You can get this uniqueness angle by simply having one slightly different perspective on your topic. But one of the things that I really want to caution you as I'm recording this mid-2026, I often find that when folks are trying to use AI for writing, but also for idea development, AI will often really push you toward that relatable. It'll push you toward the books that already exist. AI is a probability machine. It is always going to focus on what it knows to be true. And one thing it knows to be true is that books in particular topics tend to be clustered around one generic idea. And that is where the magic of your expert author authority comes in. If you can add one unique twist to that idea, you are not only separating yourself from others in your industry, you are also demonstrating that this is a human-made book. If we can put that unique spin on there, you are making yourself so much more valuable than so much of the content that is being pumped out day after day after day in the year of our Lord, 2026. Now, I want to give you a really concrete example of what I mean when I say unique, because sometimes I think we can go a little bit too far on the other end of AI going too far with the relatable. Now, I want to talk about one of our authors at Page and Podium Press, Lisa Katona Smith. Now, Lisa's book, Parallel Recovery, this book is amazing. This is a guidebook for those who love someone with substance use disorder. Now, of course, if you think about books on the topic of substance use disorder, there are so many. And many of these actually are even books that have been championed by major organizations, things like Alcoholics Anonymous. And yet, there still is so much more that can be said on this topic. And this is where Lisa's book comes in. Now, Lisa has a couple of different ways that she has achieved the uniqueness of this book, and I think they're both worth a listen. The first way is that Lisa is looking at substance use disorder treatment from a little bit of a different perspective. Whereas often the families of folks who are suffering from substance use disorder are told to do things like cut the person off, to really have no tolerance for any of their behaviors related to substance use disorder. Lisa's platform says we must give these folks a safe place to come home to. If there is nowhere for them to land, then there is no real motivation for them to work their way through this desert, this disaster of a world that they have to fight through to come back to stability. So Lisa is not talking about how family members can fix their person with substance use disorder. Rather, Lisa is talking about how the family can create a safe, stable, neurological environment for that person to come into for support. Well, that's a different twist, isn't it? Now, everything in this book is not different. Of course, many of the things that are true about substance use disorder are in her book and many, many other books. And of course, there are hundreds or thousands probably of books on substance use disorder published every several years. And yet, the way that she has twisted this idea just a little bit so that it speaks to something a little bit different. It gives us a little twist. And most importantly, it helps people who have not been helped by the other things out there. That's what makes this book so unique on the topic area. But the second thing, something I really want you to sit with, the second way that Lisa's book is unique in this space of books on substance use disorder is that Lisa's book features her own story. Now, this book is not a memoir, so that means it is not a narrative start to finish. And yet, Lisa is speaking from her own experiences, not only as someone who has worked with many people, many families who love someone with substance use disorder. She is also speaking from her own experience as a mother whose son had substance use disorder issues, who has now fought through those and is stable and thriving. Well, once we combine our topic with our experience, we have a book that is an N of one. We have a book that no one else can match. And the reason I want to point that out is I do find that many people, many experts, especially women, but some men too, will often resist putting their own experience into their book. I get it. We often feel like if we are giving our own experience, it feels somehow less valuable than giving some famous person's experience, some recognizable name, citing studies. But what I find with authors over and over again is when we center your own experiences, we not only create the uniqueness of your experience being at the center, we also often find ways that your approach is actually more unique than you even know. Because you are naturally drawing on the things that you know from your lived experience, I guarantee your approach to any topic is a little different than what anyone else could do. And Lisa has leaned into both of those points. So what you will find in this excellent prescriptive nonfiction book, again, this is not a narrative book, but she has woven in so much of her story along with prescriptive nonfiction writing that we, of course, all know, love, and expect from this genre of book. That makes this book so unique, but not in the way that she has to fall all over herself to prove how different she is from everyone else. Rather, in a way that feels effortless, a way that feels authoritative without having to try too hard. She is working through both the topic and her experience in one very unique book. Okay, so the first thing I want you to ask yourself, is your book both recognizable within genre, topic, that sort of thing, and unique in that you have folded in your own experience and or your own specific angle? If you know that your concept is going to incorporate those things, you are very likely further along than you think you are. I find that if you have come to the point of having a unique perspective on your topic, you are more than ready to get started on that book. I only have red flags when folks are wanting to write a book that really is something that we have already read many times before. Okay, so that is the first question. The second question I want you to ask yourself, are you committed? Now, this is a question that I ask rather than something like, are you confident? Are you feeling like you have done this long enough? Instead, what I want you to ask is, are you committed? And the reason that I ask that, anyone who has been out there being a thought leader, having a business, speaking about things that they're passionate about, even just sharing with friends day to day, can tell you that the biggest thing that happens when you first start talking and thinking about a topic is that your perspective will slide all over the place. As you are newly stepping into a particular area of either thought leadership or even just thought curiosity, exploration, oftentimes we will start to pick up all of these different sources. And with each new source, we'll be swayed just a little bit here or there. Well, one thing that can happen if you start to write your book just a little too early is that very often as you're moving through the process of development, you will start to feel yourself pulled in these different directions. And that is a really strong sign that you're not quite ready, that there's a little bit more kind of marination time that you need before you're quite ready to pin down your book. But what I find on the other hand is if you can think of that concept we just talked about, it's unique and also something that people will recognize. If you feel that you can commit to that, if you feel certain that that is the stake you are driving into the ground, you do not have to feel all the way confident or all the way authoritative. Instead, you can lean on the fact that you are committed to this particular angle, and that as you grow, as you learn, which of course we all do, you know that all of these new ideas are going to be able to funnel and filter roughly into the angle that you have chosen. Now, I will tell you an example of someone who came to me on a consult and who I actually suggested was not quite ready to write their book. Now, she had come to me having decided to start a new coaching business. Now, this is a woman who is working with folks who are coming out of an industry that is a little bit socially looked down on, a little bit socially ostracized. I thought it was a really great idea to think about helping people move out of this particular area and into new career fields. And that is what she wanted to do. Now, she was setting out with all kinds of things in place that just sound like the dream. She not only had a branding and website designer, and she had a brand new fancy website in the making, she also was working with someone to help her launch a professional podcast. She was working on getting expert guests to come onto that podcast to really establish herself as a thought leader. She had a whole plan of ideas that she was planning to use to build this platform that then would support the book. Now, on the surface, that is excellent. I always love to hear from authors that they are thinking about how they will promote the book even before they've started it, because oftentimes a lot of the struggle of releasing a book is actually just coming into the discomfort of being pretty visible. So it is nice if you can get a runway practicing some of that visibility before it's time for the book to come out. But at the same time, there was something here that really raised a red flag for me, and that was that she had not yet worked with any clients. Now, as I talked about before, this uniqueness angle, your own experience is a very, very helpful way to think about the way to get in on that uniqueness of your concept. But at the same time, if you have not yet practiced that concept in the wild, which she hadn't launched her podcast yet, and she also had not worked with any clients, then we really do not have any kind of validation, number one, that your audience is going to resonate with what you want to say. But number two, even more importantly, that as you start sharing that concept, you actually like talking about it. We really need to make sure that you feel really comfortable with the topic that you're introducing in your book, because y'all, it's in your book. You're going to be talking about it for a while. And this is, again, the reason that I always recommend, rather than thinking about, am I competent? Even am I confident? Instead, think about, am I committed? Do I know enough about this space, about this topic, about this context, about this angle to really know that I want to stay here for at least a couple of years, if not forever? Because if you do feel that way, one thing that I will tell you for certain, the book is going to help you hone that. The book is going to help you really dial into what that particular angle means, and it will be so, so, so helpful. But if you're not quite ready, what you will often find instead is that you are changing your mind quite literally on the content of that book almost every single week. So we really do want to make sure that you are fully committed before you start that process, just to make sure that you know the direction you're going and you're ready for it. Okay, the third and final question. Do you know clearly what you want that book to do? Now, this is a really easy question for you to ask yourself because you will have an immediate gut check on what the answer is. Because what I often find is when I ask folks who aren't quite ready what they want their book to do for them, the answer will almost always be, oh, I wanted to sell some books, some passive income. Now, there is no shame in wanting to sell some books, and there is no shame in wanting passive income. But what I will tell you is it is very, very rare in the entire nonfiction space for book sales to be the primary way you are benefiting from your book. Let me say that one more time because it's a tough truth. It is very uncommon in the nonfiction space for book sales to be the primary way you benefit from your book. So how instead do expert authors benefit from their books if it's not book sales? Well, often it is from the use of authority. Now, I teased earlier at the beginning of this video that there are lots and lots of things in terms of authority and credibility that your book will do for you. And one of those is that it will help you get better paying, better focused, more visible placement in whatever type of visibility you're looking for. So I work with many, many people who are wanting to start speaking careers. Of course, in 2026, we have so many options. We can do, of course, the old-fashioned speaker circuit, but also we have so many options for digital speaking now too. Any of those things I'm going to put all together under expert author speaking. And books are such a key to this. There is nothing like a book to not only get you better paid speaking gigs, but also get you easier access into, say, podcast guest spots, into, say, panel talks, it really highly coveted positions, into, of course, keynote addresses and other types of things like that. When you have that book, it really is a stamp of authority. So thinking about how we can use that book for this kind of thing, for leveraging our authority, is often a much, much more valuable way to think about the book than simply book sales. But that is also not the only way that you are going to leverage and benefit from this book. Even if you are not a small business owner, even within more typical career industry tracks, oftentimes a book is going to be something that allows you, for instance, a promotion. My first book, the entire purpose was to get a promotion at work, and I got it. So in that case, your book sales matter so much less. Also, if you are doing something like building a business, if you are doing something like trying to reach more people through, say, a nonprofit or some other philanthropic gesture, if you are even just trying to get entry into things that would allow you to travel, allow you to be in front of groups you want to be in front of, all of the things that authority can get you, the book can get you. But it is so important that you are thinking about the book in that way. I would say, almost across the board, when I speak to folks who are rushing the process, who are wanting to come into writing the book before I would necessarily think that they're ready, almost across the board, when I ask them what they want the book to do for them, the answer is sell. And unfortunately, when that is the main thing you're thinking of, it often tells us a lot about how built out the roots, the structure, the grounding of your thought leadership really is. Because when we are thinking holistically about using our expertise and using our stories to help other people, very often, if we're really thinking about what this is going to look like, it doesn't even have that much to do with people buying individual books. It has much, much more to do with changing the conversation in our industry, in our topic, in our sphere of influence. And while, yes, books will sell as that is happening, having the book sell is not the eventual goal that's really going to drive us forward. Instead, the goal that's going to drive us forward is that influence. So, the third question I want you to ask yourself, do you know what you want this book to do for you? Do you have a really clear sense of where you would like it to take you beyond simply a number of books sold? When you have that, you will start to think so much bigger. And you know what? The book sales are going to be better because you're thinking like that. So think about, how can you build this out? What do you want it to do for you? If you dreamed really, really big, what would that look like? Once you have that answer, I almost always find you're pretty much ready to get into this arena of writing your book. If writing your book is something that you would like help with, I want to invite you to check out our brand new freebie, the Expert Author Quiz. In this quiz, we're going to ask you a series of questions to really dial in on what type of expert author you are. What I wanted to get to the bottom of with this new freebie was really thinking about what are some of the things that are in common among the authors that I work with as we are talking about story-based nonfiction. So once you take this quiz, it's just about a 3 to 5 minute quiz. You will get a report that gives you not only other authors who are similar to you, who have had a lot of success, it will give you what is very likely your strengths, as well as the things that might trip you up through the process. And it will give you an analysis of how best to move forward from whatever spot you are in right now. This is going to be such a valuable quiz for you. So if you have not taken it yet, bop over to pageandpodium.com/quiz and give it a shot. Once you do that, once you have answered the questions I've gone through in this video, if it would be helpful to get an outside perspective on whether you're ready, whether your book does seem unique, whether your ideas about commitment are on the right track, and whether the way that you want to move forward, what types of goals you have, really are going to align with the process, feel free to head over to pageandpodium.com/contact. You can fill out a form to get a response from me directly, and I would really love to support you as you are moving forward, not only as an aspiring writer that you are, but also as the expert author that I know you can step into and really claim. You can do this, friends. I cannot wait to read your book, and until then, happy writing.
You know what they say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And this is exactly what holds so many people back on their memoir projects. That is exactly why we created the Memoir Method Checklist, a full, complete list of every single step you need to take to get that memoir written, published, and marketed successfully. You can download it now at pageandpodium.com/checklist.